Welcome back to another video, and today's topic is r/let's not meet. I've always found this subreddit interesting, so I'm just going to make a video on it. Let's get into it. First one. Knocking/ringing becoming more constant and aggressive. Don't know who it is, and we live on an island. It's already gonna be bad. Please tell me if this is the wrong subreddit to be posting this on. I posted it on RBI as well. I don't know what that is. Don't flame me for it. I don't go on Reddit very often. I don't know what that is though. My boyfriend, 23, and I, 22, moved to the very end of an island about 6 months ago. It's a second level condo and is part of a club type thing. Pretty much any people living here are above the age of 60, which isn't bad, but I definitely get the vibe that we are disturbing their community first from some. It is a really peaceful atmosphere and really low crime rate. Nice condos. We recently took our condo off the market and are in the process of selling it and moving. While beautiful, it is incredibly isolated here, and if I stay any longer, I might lose my sanity. Yeah, I understand that. I don't live super secluded, but I'd understand that. So to get to our door, you have to go up a set of stairs on the side of ours, and ours is the end unit, so it's right there. We have one window right above our sink that faces toward the stairs. Right by our door, a few days before I left back to my home state, my boyfriend has to stay there because of work. We heard a knock at the door. I went to check who it was at the little window first, and was met with a woman in about her 60s, arms crossed and against the railing, staring directly through our window at me with a smirk on her face. She doesn't look intimidating, just creepy. And I didn't feel like interacting, so I ignored her. As well as the last few days I'm there. The last few days I'm there. The day I get back to my home state, my boyfriend casually mentions on the phone how someone has been knocking, but we brushed it off. Next day, he gets home from work and goes to take his daily after work shift. Right as he sits down, he hears the doorbell ring and knock again. Again, he doesn't answer it, and they're gone by the time he's down there. This happens the next day as well, except they did it twice while he was there. Today, they came and rang the doorbell right as he had gone to take a nap. But they rang it repeatedly and pretty annoyingly followed with loud knocks. Up to this point, we had thought it was some new homeowners wanting to chat more since they're close by, and we had a few run-ins before this, so we called them and see if it was them. They said they haven't stopped by at all. 2 hours after this, while on FaceTime, someone starts ringing in the doorbell aggressively again. Immediately followed with a bunch of loud knocks. He's kind of freaked out at this point, as we know nobody there and haven't done anything to warrant somebody doing this every day, especially since they've gotten so aggressive with it. I told him to go stand by the door next time to check to see if they try and turn the knob and go listen for their voices and footsteps. When they start walking away, peek out the window to see if you can get a look at them, or just ask them what they want through the door, and if they don't give you a solid answer, to tell them to screw off. I'm pretty worried for him. We do have a young Frenchie that we take out a lot, and I know they've been getting dog napped recently. I don't know if that's far-fetched, but it still worries me. My boyfriend has to go to work for a few hours. The only thing I can think of is there's a woman who may be about in her 30s. Even before this started happening, he mentioned how it seemed off, as in maybe not all mentally there. I never noticed her myself, but my boyfriend said she's always out and nearby when he's doing anything. She just walks around with no real direction and is consistent. Is constant, I can't read. He pointed her out to me once. Once I got a glimpse as she walked away. Last night around 10 p.m., my boyfriend was at the community grill finishing his brisket when he sees her walking, which is kind of strange. But then she sees him and cuts into the grass right next to him, walking by him into the grass space behind the condos that we always take our dog on the way back to our condo. I don't know, maybe it's her. I'll be back in a few days. Any suggestions until then? Any possibilities on why someone would be knocking like this? Oh my lord, that is not okay. That's very creepy, I'm not gonna lie. It's not the worst on this subreddit, but it's still not okay. Like, that's kind of creepy how the last part, as she went behind your house. Anyway. Next subreddit? I can't speak. Next topic or thing, whatever. It's the next post. I can't talk. I was stalked because of a single act of meaningless kindness. This should be a good one. Just to preface this story, this happened about 12 years ago when I was 13 years old. The memories and emotions of this incident have faded away into the back of my mind, but recently I started having flashbacks of this incident, and it led to multiple panic attacks while driving and in public. After some deliberation, I thought perhaps writing about it and sharing it with the community that might understand the fears of experiencing this sort of thing might help me validate with my emotions, so here it goes. I was a 13-year-old living abroad when this happened. To give it a short background info that might help you better understand this story. I was living in an apartment complex every morning. The school buses would arrive at the main entrance of the entire complex and pick up kids from school. The church I was attending at the time also operated buses to help people get back home. So every Sunday, after the services were done, I would take the church bus back home. I never doubted my sense of security and safety since it was kind of a system made me feel safe and protected, which it should. That's what that was until I met him on Sunday morning. I was a church kid and quite involved one too. I was serving the youth group as part of the welcome team for newcomers when I met him. He entered the chapel with his mother following behind him, and she explained that he had recently moved to the country and we were just trying to start settling down. My first impressions of him was that he was lengthy, shy, and very quiet. He seemed so harmless, innocent, naive. So when his mother left him after filling out the form, I gave him a smile and greeted him, led him to an empty seat. I thought nothing more of it until I saw him again in my small group. So I greeted him again, saying something like, "So nice to see you again." I still remember how he just shyly nodded, not really giving me an answer. When the small group time ended, I took out a high chew Korean soft candy. Okay. and gave him one to everyone in the group, and even the teacher. As I handed the rectangular candy to him, he softly whispered, "Thank you," and walked away. That was the first time I heard him speak. I hadn't realized that he was living in the same complex as me until I got off the church bus and saw him coming down the steps as well. It was a funny coincidence, so I told him how weird it was that we were in the same small group and also living in the same complex. He nodded again, and I walked off the bus, off the first, because he was waiting for his mom and little sister, who were coming behind him. My apartment building was number 20, the first building in the row of buildings. I had opened the door and was about to go in. He followed behind me. Me, still in that newcomer greeting mode, responded to this by asking him if he was living in the same building as I was. He nodded again. I noticed that his mother and his sister were not here yet. So I got into the elevator, asked him if he was going to wait for him, and gave him a goodbye. When he quickly nodded yes. Next day morning, I saw him waiting in the lobby when I got out of the elevator. He was alone, and I asked him if he was waiting for his sister. He nodded, so I quickly gave him a "have a nice day" and ran off so that I wouldn't miss my school bus. And for every day this week, I saw him waiting for his sister in the lobby, standing in the corner right in the elevator. I didn't think much of it. I would always say hi or good morning to him, and he would just nod or wave timidly. There was nothing more than that. That is until one Sunday, when I got back home after church, he was walking behind me, this time together with his sister and mom. So I thought it would be nice girl, and hold the door for them. So I waited, holding the door open, only to have three of them walk right past my building. Strange, I thought, so I peeked my head out to see that they were entering building number 15, my past building, number 15, which was 5 buildings down the street. At first I didn't think much of it, thinking they might have moved out of building 20 into building 15. But when I stepped out of the elevator next morning to see him again in the lobby, in the same corner he was standing in every morning, my heart sank deep. I don't know how I responded to it, but I remember choosing not to confront him because I was in denial that this was actually happening and didn't have the courage to ask for an answer. Things quickly progressed since that day. I started getting late night calls on my cell phone, the typical not going to speak but just going to breathe heavily, like type calls. Kind of call that makes you feel insecure even though you know you're safe in your room. He also stopped waiting for me in the lobby since that morning, but would stand in the far corner of the street every day and watch me wait for my bus. Me becoming hyper-vigilant didn't help with the situation either. I could always spot him watching me, even though he would often try to hide behind thick trees or guards' cabins. It made me feel sick to my stomach, but I don't think I felt so threatened cornered to this point. At least in that moment. I wanted to seek adult help. I was a very, very private teenager who was also already keeping some traumatic experience secret from my parents. So naturally this felt like another secret I would keep so they wouldn't worry about me. At church I kept my bright facade, but would distance myself as far as possible to avoid any sort of contact with him. I actively put distance between him and me because I would decide to play by my facade and say hi to him. Instead of returning my greetings, he would stare once at my face and then drop his gaze down to my private areas. The fact that it was summer and I was wearing shorts did not help. All at all whenever he was staring at my thighs and between my legs. The shame, the embarrassment, the feeling that I was being dirty gazed. The anxiety, the paranoia, it was too much for me. I started skipping the small group sessions and left right after that. The youth group ended, so I would avoid getting home with him at the same time. On days that I didn't happen to attend the small group, I sat quietly, unwilling to speak a single word while he stared at me intensely. One day, while a teacher was leading the discussion, he suddenly burst into anger, yelling, shouting, "Why do you keep ignoring me when I clearly know that I like you?" Needless to say, I was embarrassed, ashamed, shocked, and terrified all at the same time. The teacher tried to de-escalate the situation, but he stormed out, yelling how frustrated he was with me for not returning his affection. I wanted to leave as well, but the fear that I might run into him made me stay in my seat, while everyone in the group whispered among themselves about the sudden drama that had happened before them. It was a huge shock to me that he was doing all these things because he liked me. But what shook me more was at that moment was the fact that the teacher didn't even seem to be fazed at all by the sudden outburst. She didn't seem surprised by the fact that he had such feelings for me. Instead, she casted glances at me with some sort of knowing in her eyes. I always wondered how he had gotten a hold of my phone number. That was it. The teacher dismissed everyone but asked me to stay. I was always the model student at church, but that moment I was left alone with her. I lost it. I cursed and swore and demanded her to tell me if she knew. If she knew how much he was making my life miserable. She told me she knew he liked me. Apparently he started liking me because of the stupid ass candy I gave him on the first day. She had given him my phone number because she thought it was cute seeing him like me so much. So I told her what he had been doing, how he waited for me every morning in the lobby, even though he lived in a different building, how he would stare and constantly watch me from the corner of the street, how he would stare between my thighs and at my chest, how he would call me late at night and heavily breathe, and all that. I was having trouble speaking and breathing because of how much I was crying, and I remember yelling, "He's like a stalker." And that was when I fully recognized that I was being stalked. When I became quiet due to this shock of realization. The teacher took her chance to speak and told me that he was a mentally troubled kid who didn't know better, so I needed to stop. Just bear with it. That was the end of the conversation. Honestly, there is a gap in my memory after that day. So it is hard for me to recall what events had led up to it, but the last time I saw him was when I most fearfully encountered him. I was already on the church bus waiting. There were two girls sitting a couple rows ahead of me, and the bus was silent other than that. I was sitting by the aisle when I saw him get on the bus. The strange thing was that when he got on, the two girls suddenly turned extremely hostile towards him and told him to get off the bus and called him a pervert. responded angrily, "Well, you aren't the ones I want to see anyway, so shut up." This was the first time I heard him speak such profanity, so I honestly was shocked. And he fixed his eyes straight at me, walked over to where I was, and sat row diagonal behind my seat. My heart was pounding, and I wanted to sit by the window to hide his gaze from me. But I was scared he would think of an invitation to sit next to me, so I stayed frozen in my seat until more people came in and only moved to the window seat when an adult asked if they could sit next to me. I think there was an instinctive feeling that they told me I couldn't get off with him. So I purposefully got off at the stop before my apartment. It was only a 600-meter walk from the bus to my home, so I mixed in with other people and got off the bus. The bus had stopped by the side entrance of another apartment complex. I just needed to walk down the street to get to mine. But then the street was empty and deserted because it was the one of those areas where people were developed by the city. So I started walking toward my home, and when I realized that he had also gotten off with me, he was walking a few feet behind me, my gut wrenched as he got closer and closer. Something told me being alone with him on the street was dangerous, so I broke into a run, and I saw an alleyway that parted off the road. In my panic, I turned into the alley and was relieved when I saw that there were some small shops that were busy with people. There were people hanging in the alley, chilling by the benches outside and stuff. I was certain that he couldn't have followed me into the alley after I'd ran, but still checked just in case. But there he was, still following me. He had ran after me. My relief quickly turned to terror, and I hastened my pace, purposefully weaving in between people in the hopes of losing. Whenever I looked back, I could still see him. Eventually, the people hanging by the shops thinned out, and I was walking at an empty alleyway. On the opposite end of the alley, I could see that there was a bigger road with more cars and people. I was already quite out of breath, as I wasn't a fit person, but my last strength I ran for the busy road, hoping to lose him if he wasn't behind me. I stopped once and I reached a busy road and turned around looking into an empty alley. I stood there for an extra minute staring into the alley to confirm that he wasn't following me. Fortunately, my friend's house was close by, so I stayed at her place until I felt safe enough to walk home. That was the last time I saw him. I stopped going to the small group. I started serving children's apartment as an accomplishment so I could avoid going to the youth group. I didn't see him again after that, but one time I happened to meet my small group teacher, and she told me that he had left the country. Apparently, he was reported multiple times at school for lewd behavior, such as sneaking into the girls' restroom. That was why the girls on the bus were grossed out by him, and in the end had been expelled from the school. I think that when I decided to bury the terror and fear away was because he was no longer an immediate threat in my life. Funny story though, after the whole incident I had watched Ferris Bueller's Day Off at school. But the moment Ferris' friend Cameron Fry showed on the screen, I had to run to the bathroom to throw up because the actor's face looked exactly like him, and just watching his face brought back the trauma. Now I can watch the movie, but looking at Cameron's face gives me anxiety. Anyways, if anyone has made it to the end of this long post, thank you for staying with me. I often wonder what might have happened, what might have become of him, and wonder if his parents knew that it was his son. If he was truly suffering from mental illness, my only hope is that he received proper trauma treatment so that no one else had to go through what I did. And that was a long story to read, but still a good story. So, I hope y'all enjoyed, subscribe, like, and I hope y'all have a good day. Peace.